The exhibition hall buzzed with excitement as cadets from 12 different species filled the massive auditorium. Station Veros, home to the Galactic Defense Academy, hosted this event every year. It was the place where weapons manufacturers and armor designers showed off their newest creations. For the cadets, it meant a day away from regular training and a chance to see technology that might save their lives one day. Do-yoon Kim stood near the back of the crowd, his dark eyes taking in everything. He was shorter than most aliens around him, but that was normal for humans. His species had only joined the Galactic Coalition 30 years ago. Earth was still the new kid on the block, and everyone knew it. Out of 3,000 cadets at the academy, only 7 were human. Sometimes Do-yoon felt those statistics pressing down on him like gravity. The current demonstration had everyone's attention. Commander Thalvex of the Krithian Empire stood on the main platform, his forearms gesturing dramatically toward a suit of armor that seemed to glow from within. The armor was beautiful in a way that made Do-yoon's teeth ache. It looked like someone had woven starlight into metal and glass, creating something that belonged in an art museum rather than a battlefield. The quantum weave combat suit represents 15 years of research, Thalvex announced, his translator making his clicking speech sound smooth and confident. This armor has withstood every test we could design. Plasma cannons leave no mark. Kinetic weapons bounce off like rain. We even survived a nuclear detonation in controlled conditions. The crowd murmured with appreciation. Do-yoon noticed how the other cadets leaned forward, hungry for every word. Next to him, a Vrelian cadet whose name he could never pronounce whispered something to her friend about how this would change warfare forever. The material regenerates at the molecular level, Thalvex continued. Damage repairs itself within seconds. The suit is, for all practical purposes, unbreakable. That word hung in the air like a challenge. Unbreakable. Do-yoon had heard that word before. Back on Earth, in his grandfather's stone workshop, the old man would laugh whenever a client insisted they wanted something unbreakable. Nothing is unbreakable, his grandfather would say. Everything has a weakness. You just need to find it. The demonstration began. Academy instructors wheeled out weapon after weapon. First came the standard laser rifle, the kind every coalition soldier carried. The beam hit the armor dead center and simply vanished, absorbed into that strange glowing material without leaving a trace. Next came heavier weapons. A plasma cannon that could punch through a tank's hull, an electromagnetic pulse device, a Vrelian electroblade that hummed with enough power to cut through a blast door. Each weapon failed. The armor didn't just survive the attacks. It seemed to mock them, its glow never dimming, its surface never marking. The crowd's excitement grew with each failure. This was the kind of technology that cadets dreamed about. Protection that actually worked. Armor that might let them come home from the wars that constantly flared up across the galaxy. Do-yoon watched it all with different eyes. His fingers twitched at his sides, wanting to touch that armor, to feel its weight and texture. His grandfather had taught him to trust his hands more than his eyes. Sensors lie, the old man would say. Scanners show you what they're programmed to show. But your hands never lie if you know how to listen. After 30 minutes of demonstrations, Thalvex raised all 4 arms in triumph. As you can see, the quantum weave combat suit is unbreakable by any conventional means. The Krithian Empire is proud to offer this technology to the Coalition. Within 5 years, we estimate every frontline soldier can be equipped with this level of protection. The cadets erupted in applause. Even the instructors looked impressed. Only Do-yoon remained still, his eyes fixed on the armor, specifically on the chest piece where several sections of the material came together. There was something about that junction point that bothered him. The way the light flowed through it seemed wrong somehow, like water hitting a rock in a stream. Before he could think better of it, Do-yoon raised his hand. The gesture felt small in the huge auditorium, but Thalvex's eyes were sharp. All 4 of them focused on the human cadet at the back of the crowd. The applause died down. Other cadets turned to look. Yes, cadet? Thalvex's tone suggested he was being polite out of obligation rather than interest. Do-yoon's mouth felt dry. He could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes on him. Somewhere to his left, he heard Lieutenant Hana Park, his squad leader, make a small noise of concern. But he'd already started. Might as well finish, sir, Do-yoon said, his accent making the galactic common words sound clumsy. Would you mind if I tested that claim? Silence fell over the exhibition hall like a blanket. It was so quiet that Do-yoon could hear his own heartbeat. The other cadets exchanged glances. Some looked confused. Others seemed amused. A few of the alien cadets who'd been friendly to the humans looked worried. Thalvex's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. You wish to test the armor, human. With what weapon? We have just demonstrated that it withstands everything from small arms to nuclear force. Not with a weapon, sir, Doyen said. His hands were sweating now, but his voice stayed steady. His grandfather had taught him that too. If you're going to make a claim, make it with confidence. With a hammer. Now the silence shattered into laughter. Not mean-spirited, exactly, but the kind of laughter that comes when someone says something so absurd that people can't help themselves. A hammer. Against armor that survived nuclear weapons. It was ridiculous, but Thalvex wasn't laughing. His eyes studied Doyen with new interest. Perhaps he saw something in the human's stance. Some certainty that didn't match the absurdity of the request. Or perhaps he simply wanted to teach the primitive species a lesson about the difference between Crithian technology and human understanding. Very well, Thalvex said slowly. You may test it. But when you fail, human, remember that some of us have been working with advanced materials for longer than your species has had fire. Doyen bowed slightly, the way his mother had taught him to show respect. Yes, sir. I'll remember that. As he walked toward the platform, Doyen heard Lieutenant Park whisper urgently behind him. She was probably telling him to stop, to apologize and sit down before he embarrassed all of humanity. But Doyen kept walking. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. Everything has a weakness, boy. Stone, metal, crystal, even people. The trick isn't having the biggest hammer. It's knowing exactly where to swing it. The exhibition hall waited to see if a human with a simple hammer could do what advanced weapons could not. Most expected him to fail. Doyen expected something different. He expected to find what Thalvex had missed while building his unbreakable armor. He expected to find the weakness. Academy staff moved quickly to clear space around the armor display. Energy barriers hummed to life, creating a transparent dome around the testing area. Standard safety protocol, though nobody really expected them to be necessary. What damage could a primitive tool do where advanced weapons had failed? Doyen barely noticed the barriers going up. His attention was fixed on the armor, now mounted on a proper stand at his request. The quantum weave combat suit stood at attention like a soldier waiting for orders. Up close, it was even more impressive than from the back of the auditorium. The material seemed alive, pulsing with that internal light that made it look like frozen lightning. Cadet Kim. The voice made Doyen turn. Lieutenant Hannah Park stood just outside the energy barrier, her face tight with worry. She was one of the senior human officers at the academy, which meant she bore responsibility for what the 7 human cadets did or didn't do. Right now, her expression said she was already calculating how much damage control this situation would need. Lieutenant? Doyen acknowledged. Step out here for a moment. It wasn't a request. Doyen glanced back at the armor, then ducked under the barrier. Hannah pulled him aside, away from the closest spectators. When she spoke, her voice was low and urgent. What are you doing? Do you have any idea what's at stake here? Testing armor, ma'am. Don't play stupid with me, Doyen. You're about to embarrass yourself in front of the entire academy. Worse, you're going to embarrass Earth. Our position in the coalition is still fragile. We don't need humans looking like arrogant idiots who think they know better than species that have been spacefaring for millennia. Doyen met her eyes. Hannah was a good officer, he knew that. She'd fought hard to get where she was. Probably dealt with twice the scrutiny any alien officer faced. She was protecting their species' reputation, which was her job. I know what I'm doing, ma'am, he said quietly. With a hammer? Against that? She gestured at the armor. Doyen, that suit survived weapons we can't even build yet. What makes you think? Permission to continue, Lieutenant? Doyen interrupted, keeping his voice respectful but firm. Hannah stared at him for a long moment. Then she sighed, the kind of sigh that carried the weight of responsibility she didn't want. Fine, but when this goes wrong, you're writing the report to Earth Command explaining why humanity looked foolish today. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Doyen returned to the testing area. He could feel hundreds of eyes watching him. The recording devices, too. This would be all over the galactic networks within hours, either as an example of human ingenuity or human stupidity. No middle ground. Commander Thalvex stood near the armor, his forearms crossed in a gesture that somehow conveyed both amusement and impatience. The human returns. I assume you have some plan beyond simply hitting my creation? Yes, sir. I need 3 things if that's acceptable. The commander's mandibles clicked. Make your requests. First, a standard combat hammer from the Academy's human equipment locker. Second, 5 minutes to examine the armor's structure before I begin. Third, I need the suit to stay on this stand instead of being suspended. Thalvex considered this. The requests seemed harmless enough, even if they were strange. Very well. You may have your primitive tool and your time. The suit will remain as it is. 2 Academy staff members left to retrieve the hammer. Doyen approached the armor, rolling his shoulders to loosen the tension. Around him, the crowd settled in to watch. Some cadets were already making bets. The odds weren't in Doyen's favor. Near the front, Instructor Jaewon Choi watched with narrowed eyes. Choi was the senior human officer at the Academy, older than Hana, with enough combat experience that even alien instructors respected him. Unlike the others, Choi wasn't showing worry or amusement. He was watching Doyen the way a teacher watches a student attempting a difficult problem. The hammer arrived. It was nothing special, just standard Earth military issue. Metal head, composite handle, weight balanced for repeated strikes. The kind of tool humans had been using in one form or another for thousands of years. Next to the quantum weave combat suit, it looked like something from a museum. Doyen took the hammer, feeling its familiar weight. Good balance. Solid construction. It would do. Then he began his examination. He walked around the armor slowly, trailing his fingers across its surface. The material felt strange, neither hot nor cold, neither rough nor smooth. It seemed to exist in some state between solid and liquid, responding to touch in ways that made no logical sense. But Doyen wasn't relying on logic. He was listening. His knuckles rapped against different sections. Each produced a different sound. Some rang clear like bells. Others gave dull thuds. He focused on the chest piece where multiple sections of the material came together. That junction point that had caught his attention during the demonstration. What is the human doing? Someone in the crowd whispered. Using his hands like a barbarian, another responded. Why not use scanners? Instructor Choi smiled slightly at that. He'd seen this before, back on Earth, in the shipyards where Doyen had trained before joining the Academy. The young man came from a family of craftsmen. His grandfather worked stone. His father worked metal. Doyen had grown up trusting his hands more than any machine. 5 minutes passed. Doyen stepped back from the armor and lifted the hammer. The crowd fell silent again, that expectant quiet before something either amazing or terrible happens. The thing about calling something unbreakable, Doyen said, his voice carrying across the exhibition hall, is that you stop looking for the breakpoint. He positioned himself carefully. Feet planted, weight balanced. The hammer felt like an extension of his arm. He'd practiced this stance 10,000 times in his grandfather's workshop. Different material, same principle. His eyes fixed on the junction point where 3 sections of the quantum weave met. That spot where the light flowed wrong. Where the structure, for just a fraction of an inch, wasn't quite as perfect as everywhere else. Doyen took a breath. Then he swung. The hammer connected with a sound like thunder. The impact rang through the exhibition hall, making some of the cadets flinch. Every recording device focused on the point of contact. Nothing happened. The armor didn't crack, didn't dent, didn't show any sign of damage at all. Commander Thalvex's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Several cadets laughed. This was exactly what they expected. Primitive tool meets advanced technology. Technology wins, but Doyen wasn't done. He pulled the hammer back and struck again. Same spot, same angle, same force, and again. The crowd's amusement started to fade into confusion. What was the human doing? Didn't he see it wasn't working? Some cadets started to look away, embarrassed for him. This was just sad now. Lieutenant Park covered her face with one hand. This was worse than she'd feared. The human wasn't just failing. He was failing in the most stubborn, visible way possible. But Instructor Choi leaned forward, his eyes sharp. Because he noticed what most of the crowd missed. The sound was changing. Each impact rang slightly different than the last. The armor was responding even if the response wasn't visible yet. Doyen continued. 10 strikes, 20, 50. Sweat began to bead on his forehead. His breathing stayed steady and controlled. The hammer rose and fell with mechanical precision, over and over on that exact same spot. In his mind, Doyen heard his grandfather's voice. Every material has a memory, boy. Hit it once, it remembers. Hit it twice, it remembers better. Hit it enough times in exactly the right place, and it remembers so well that it forgets how to hold together. 70 strikes. 71. 72. On the 73rd strike, something changed. The sound was different, sharper, clearer, a crystalline note that cut through the ambient noise like a blade, and everyone saw it. A hairline fracture, glowing with that same blue light, spreading from the impact point like frozen lightning across the quantum weave combat suit's chest piece. The unbreakable armor had broken. For a moment, nobody moved. The exhibition hall held its collective breath as that glowing blue fracture spread across the quantum weave combat suit, like ice forming on a winter window. The crack moved slowly but deliberately, following lines that seemed random but probably weren't. Each branch followed the stress patterns that Doyun's repeated. Strikes had created in the material. Then chaos erupted. Crithian engineers rushed forward with scanning devices held high. Their equipment beeped and flashed as they recorded every detail of the failure. Commander Thalvex stood frozen, all four arms hanging limp at his sides. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of distress that even the humans recognized. Impossible, one of the Crithian engineers said. The regeneration systems should be engaging. Why aren't they engaging? The armor's internal glow pulsed frantically, trying to activate its self-repair functions, but the crack kept spreading. Whatever damage Doyun had done went deeper than the surface. The material's molecular structure had been compromised in a way the regeneration system didn't know how to handle. Doyun lowered his hammer and stepped back, breathing hard. His arms ached from the repeated impacts. 73 strikes with full force took its toll even on someone used to physical labor, but he'd done it. He'd found the weakness that the Crithian Empire's best engineers had missed. The crowd erupted into noise. Cadets shouted questions. Instructors demanded explanations. Recording devices zoomed in on the spreading crack, capturing every moment for analysis. This wasn't just a demonstration anymore. This was history. Lieutenant Hannah Park pushed through the crowd, her expression somewhere between shock and something that might have been pride. She stopped at the energy barrier, staring at the damaged armor, then at Doyun. How? She asked simply. Before Doyun could answer, Cadet Mina Song appeared beside Hannah. Mina was another human studying engineering with a focus on xenotechnology. She'd always been the smartest person in any room, able to understand alien technology that made other humans' heads hurt. Right now her eyes were wide with realization. Resonance, Mina said. He used resonance. Commander Thalvex turned sharply toward the human cadet. Explain. Mina climbed over the energy barrier, ignoring the protests from Academy staff. She approached the armor carefully, her scanner already out and recording data. The quantum weave is incredibly strong against single impacts, even massive ones. Your tests all focused on that. One big hit from a plasma cannon. One explosion? One blade strike. But you never tested repeated impacts on the exact same point. She gestured at the junction where 3 sections of the armor met. This is a stress point. It has to be because 3 different sections of material come together here. When Private Kim struck it the first time, he created micro-vibrations in the material. Those vibrations traveled through the structure and reflected back. The second strike came at exactly the right moment to reinforce those vibrations instead of canceling them out. Resonance, Instructor Jaewon Choi said, joining the group. His voice carried authority that made even the Crithian engineers listen. Every material has a resonant frequency. Hit it at that frequency repeatedly, and the vibrations build up. Eventually, the structure can't handle the accumulated stress. One of the Crithian engineers clicked their mandibles in understanding. Like how ancient Earth singers could shatter glass with their voices. Exactly like that, Mina confirmed. Except Private Kim didn't use sound. He used kinetic force timed perfectly, striking the weakest point in the armor's structure. Each impact built on the previous one until the molecular bonds couldn't hold. Commander Thalvex looked at Doyun with new eyes. You calculated all of this before striking? The resonant frequency, the stress point, the exact angle and force needed? Doyun shook his head. No, sir. I just listened. Listened? The commander's translator struggled with the confusion in his voice. My grandfather taught me stonework, Doyun explained. His breathing had steadied now, though his arms still ached. Every material makes sounds. You just have to pay attention. When I tapped the armor with my knuckles during the examination, I heard how it responded. The chest piece sounded different than the arms or legs, and that junction point sounded different than anywhere else. He gestured at the crack with his hammer, so I hit it there, and I kept hitting it because the sound changed each time. Got a little higher, a little sharper. That meant the material was stressing. I just kept going until it broke. The exhibition hall had gone quiet again. Cadets and instructors pressed close to hear this explanation. To most of them, it sounded like magic. How could someone just listen to material and know where it would break? That wasn't how engineering worked. That wasn't scientific, but Instructor Choi understood. Humans have been working with materials for thousands of years. Stone, metal, wood, glass. Before we had sensors and computers, we had our hands and ears. We learned to read materials the way you read languages. That knowledge doesn't just disappear because we developed better tools. A Vrelian instructor pushed forward, their scales reflecting the lights. This is a significant finding. If the quantum weave combat suit has this vulnerability, then any enemy could exploit it. All they need is the knowledge and a simple kinetic weapon. The implications hit everyone at once. This wasn't just about one cadet breaking one armor sample. This was about the entire military strategy of the Krithian Empire potentially being compromised. If their unbreakable armor could be broken by anyone with a hammer and patience, then all their plans needed revision. Commander Thalvex's mandibles clicked slowly. His career was probably over. 15 years of research, billions of credits invested, and a human cadet with a primitive tool had exposed a critical flaw in minutes. But to his credit, the commander didn't rage or make excuses. He simply asked, "Can it be fixed?" Mina was already studying her scanner readouts. Maybe. You'd need to redesign the junction points, add stress dissipation layers, maybe incorporate a secondary structure that can absorb and redirect resonance effects. But yes, theoretically it can be fixed. How long would that take? Years, probably. This isn't a small adjustment. You'd be rebuilding the armor's entire structural design from the ground up. Thalvex nodded slowly. Then we have much work to do. He turned to Doyen. Human, I owe you an apology. And possibly a debt. You have potentially saved many lives today. Doyen bowed slightly. Just doing my duty, sir. No, the commander said firmly. What you did went beyond duty. You questioned something everyone else accepted. You trusted your primitive instincts over our advanced technology, and you were right. His mandibles clicked in what might have been respect. Perhaps my people have forgotten something your species still remembers. The crowd began to disperse, cadets and instructors breaking into heated discussions. The recording devices kept running, capturing every angle of the damaged armor. By tomorrow, this would be the top story on every coalition news network. Lieutenant Park finally managed to reach Doyun. She looked at him for a long moment, then shook her head with a small smile. I was wrong. You didn't embarrass Earth today, I know. Ma'am. You're also incredibly lucky that it worked. Yes, ma'am. And if you ever pull something like this again without warning me first, I'll have you cleaning waste recyclers for a month. Understood, ma'am. As the exhibition hall slowly emptied, Doyen stood looking at the fractured armor. The crack had stopped spreading now, frozen in its pattern like a blue lightning bolt across the chest piece. It was strangely beautiful in its destruction. Instructor Choi came to stand beside him. Your grandfather would be proud, maybe, Doyen said. He always said that the best craftsmen are the ones who can find the weakness before it becomes a problem. Said it's easier to fix a crack when it's still just a possibility. Wise man. He was. Is. I hope he's watching the news feeds. Choi chuckled. I imagine half of Earth will be watching by tomorrow. You just changed how the galaxy thinks about human capabilities. I just hit something with a hammer. You did a lot more than that, and you know it. Choi placed a hand on Doyen's shoulder. What you did today was remind everyone that advancement isn't the same as perfection. That old knowledge still has value. That sometimes the simplest solution is the right one. Doyen nodded, still staring at the crack. He'd come to the exhibition expecting nothing more than a chance to learn about new technology. Instead, he'd become the center of attention for the entire Galactic Defense Academy. The thought made him uncomfortable, but his grandfather's voice echoed in his memory one more time. When you find a weakness, boy, you have two choices. You can ignore it and hope it never matters, or you can point it out so someone can fix it. The first choice is easier. The second choice is right. Doyun had made his choice. Now he'd have to live with the consequences. The recording went viral within hours. By the next morning, Every major news network across the coalition was showing footage of a human cadet with a simple hammer-breaking armor that was supposed to withstand nuclear weapons. The headlines varied by species and political leaning, but they all captured the same basic shock. Human cadet exposes critical flaw in Crithian military technology. Primitive tool defeats advanced armor. Has humanity taught the galaxy a lesson? Doyen tried to ignore the attention. He went to his morning classes like always, sat in the back like always, took notes like always. But nothing was normal anymore. Other cadets stared at him, some with respect, others with suspicion, a few with outright hostility. In tactical analysis class, a Vrelian cadet named Kresh approached him. Kresh was twice Doyen's size and had made it clear from day one that he didn't think humans belonged at the academy. "You embarrassed the Crithians," Kresh said, looming over Doyen's desk. "Made them look weak. Made all of us look weak for trusting their technology." Doyen kept his eyes on his datapad. "I just tested armor like the commander allowed." "You made a fool of Commander Thalvex. In Crithian culture, that kind of humiliation can end a career. Maybe you don't care about honor in human culture, but we do." Before Doyen could respond, Mina Song appeared beside Kresh. She was small even by human standards, but she stared up at the Vrelian without flinching. He potentially saved thousands of lives by finding that weakness now instead of on a battlefield. If your culture values honor over survival, that's a problem with your culture. Kresh's scales rippled with anger, but he backed down. Causing a fight in class would get him expelled. He returned to his seat, shooting dark looks at both humans. "Thanks," Doyen whispered. "Don't mention it. Though you really should have expected this kind of reaction. I expected people to be mad. Just not this mad." The instructor arrived and class began, but Doyen could feel the tension in the room. It stayed with him through his other classes too. The academy had always been diverse, with cadets from dozens of species learning to work together. But there were cracks now, divisions that hadn't been so obvious before. The Crithian cadets avoided all humans. The Vrelians watched them with suspicion. Only a few species, mostly the ones who'd had conflicts with the Crithian Empire, seemed genuinely pleased with what happened. At lunch, Doyen sat with the other human cadets. All 7 of them had gravitated to the same table without planning it. "Safety in numbers. This is getting ridiculous," Yunahan said. She was studying tactical operations and had a sharp mind for politics. "Half the academy thinks you're a hero. The other half thinks you're a troublemaker who disrespected an allied species." "What do you think?" Doyen asked. "I think you did what needed doing. But I also think you've made things complicated for all of us." Lieutenant Hannah Park joined their table, which was unusual. Officers rarely ate with cadets. "You all need to be careful for the next few weeks. There's been talk in the instructor meetings. Some species representatives want Doyen expelled." The table went silent. Expulsion from the academy meant returning to Earth in disgrace, any military career over before it started. "On what grounds?" Mina demanded. "Insubordination. Exceeding authority as a cadet. Deliberately humiliating an allied species. Take your pick. The Crithians are putting pressure on the Academy Council." Doyen felt his stomach drop. "I had permission to test the armor." "You had permission to try. Nobody expected you to actually break it. Now there's a political situation, and politics means someone needs to take the blame." Hannah's expression was grim. "There's a formal hearing tomorrow. You'll need to defend your actions." "Will he have representation?" Yuna asked. Instructor Choi volunteered to speak on his behalf. "I'll be there too. But I won't lie to you, Doyen. This could go badly." That night, Doyen couldn't sleep. He lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling of his quarters, replaying the exhibition over and over. Had he made a mistake? Should he have kept quiet, not volunteered to test the armor? But then he remembered the cracks spreading across that supposedly unbreakable material. Remembered Mina explaining how any enemy could exploit the same weakness. How many soldiers would have died wearing armor they thought would protect them, only to fall to someone who figured out the same thing Doyen had. No, he'd done the right thing, even if it cost him his career. The hearing took place in one of the Academy's formal chambers. It was smaller than Doyen expected, just a long table where 5 members of the Academy Council sat, representatives from 5 different species, each wearing the formal robes of their position. Commander Thalvex was there too, sitting to one side with several other Crithian officials. His expression was unreadable. Doyen stood at attention while the charges were read. insubordination, exceeding cadet authority, causing deliberate harm to coalition property. Each one carried potential penalties ranging from disciplinary action to expulsion. The head of the council, an elderly Makesh with silver skin and knowing eyes, looked down at Doyen. Before we hear testimony, Cadet Kim, do you have anything to say in your defense? Doyen took a breath. Instructor Choi had helped him prepare a statement, but now that the moment had arrived, the formal words seemed wrong. Instead, he spoke from his heart. Council members, I volunteered to test the armor because I believed I could identify a weakness. I was right. That armor was being presented as protection for coalition soldiers. If it has a flaw that enemies could exploit, we needed to know that. We needed to know it here, safely in a testing environment, not on a battlefield where it would cost lives. You embarrassed the Krithian Empire, one of the council members said. Avrelian, scales marked with military decorations. I didn't intend to embarrass anyone. I intended to test armor. That's what testing is for, finding weaknesses before they become problems. You used a primitive tool, another council member added. Were you trying to prove human methods superior to advanced technology? No, I used the tool I understood best. If someone else had a better way to test the armor, they should have volunteered. Nobody did, Instructor Choi stood. Permission to speak? The council head nodded. What Cadet Kim did was exactly what we train soldiers to do. Identify enemy weaknesses and exploit them. The only difference is that he did it to allied technology instead of enemy technology. But the result is the same. We now know the quantum weave combat suit has a critical vulnerability. We can fix it before it costs lives. Cadet Kim should be commended, not punished. The Krithian Empire has filed a formal complaint, the Vrelian council member said. They claim this incident has damaged their reputation and cost them billions in potential military contracts. Doyen blinked. He'd known the armor was expensive, but billions. The weight of what he'd done suddenly felt heavier. Then Commander Thalvek stood. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. Permission to speak on behalf of the accused? The council members looked surprised, but the head nodded. Granted. Thalvex walked to stand beside Doyen. His forearms gestured formally. I was angry when the human broke my armor. 15 years of work, destroyed in minutes by a primitive tool. I wanted someone to blame, and Cadet Kim was the obvious target. He paused, mandibles clicking slowly. But I have spent the past 2 days reviewing the incident with my engineers, and I have concluded something important. Cadet Kim did not humiliate the Krithian Empire. We humiliated ourselves. The council members leaned forward. We became arrogant. Thalvex continued. We created something powerful and declared it perfect. We tested it against every advanced weapon we could imagine. But we never tested it against someone thinking differently, someone approaching the problem without preconceptions about what should or shouldn't work. He turned to look at Doyen. The human saw what we missed because he wasn't looking for sophisticated solutions. He trusted his instincts and his experience with materials. He found the weakness that our simulations and sensors could not detect. Thalvex faced the council again. If we punish Cadet Kim for this, we send a message to every soldier in the coalition. We tell them that questioning established technology is wrong, that trusting their own judgment over official declarations is insubordination. Is that really the message this academy wants to send? The chamber fell silent. The council members exchanged looks, having a conversation without words. Finally, the council head spoke. This chamber will deliberate. Cadet Kim, you are dismissed until we reach a decision. Doyen bowed and left, his heart pounding. Instructor Choi and Lieutenant Park followed him into the corridor. That was unexpected, Hana said quietly. Thalvex speaking for him? Choi nodded. Very unexpected, and very significant. They waited in the corridor for 2 hours. Other cadets passed by, whispering. News of the hearing had spread fast. Finally, the chamber doors opened. The council has reached a decision. Doyen walked back in alone, his legs unsteady. The 5 council members watched him with expression. The council head stood. Cadet Doyen Kim, after careful deliberation, this council has decided that your actions, while unorthodox, served the greater good of the coalition. The charges against you are dismissed. Relief flooded through Doyen so strongly he almost stumbled. However, the council head continued, your methods have created a unique situation. We are therefore creating a new position at this academy. Joe? 3 months passed, and the Galactic Defense Academy felt different. The changes weren't dramatic or sudden, but anyone who paid attention could see them accumulating like snow building into an avalanche. In Workshop 7, Doyen stood with a team of Crethean engineers examining the third prototype of what they were calling the Unity-class combat suit. The armor looked similar to the original quantum weave design, but anyone who understood materials could see the differences. The junction points were reinforced now, with overlapping layers that could distribute stress. The material itself had been modified to include microstructures that absorbed and redirected resonance instead of accumulating it. "Try the hammer," lead engineer Hekim suggested. Gesturing at the testing stand, Doyen picked up his now famous tool. It was the same hammer he'd used during the exhibition, though someone had attached a small plaque to the handle reading "Protocol Breaker." He wasn't sure if that was meant as a joke or a compliment. He went through the same routine as before, examined the armor with his hands, tapped it with his knuckles to hear how it responded, found what felt like the weakest point and positioned himself to strike. 73 swings later, the armor remained intact. The sound changed slightly with each impact, but there was no stress building. No accumulation of force. The new design was working. "Success," Hakim declared, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "The resonance is being dispersed through the secondary lattice structure exactly as projected." "It's good," Doyen agreed, lowering the hammer. "But try having someone hit it with varied timing, not rhythmic like I just did. Random intervals." One of the younger Crethean engineers looked confused. "Why would that matter? If it can withstand rhythmic impacts that build resonance, surely it can handle random ones." "Maybe," Doyen said. "But materials can be funny. Sometimes chaos finds cracks that pattern misses. Better to test everything." The engineer started to argue, then stopped. 3 months of working with humans had taught the Crethean team something important. When a human said something sounded wrong, it was worth investigating. Their instincts weren't always right, but they were right often enough to be valuable. "We will add random interval testing to the protocol," Hakim decided. This kind of collaboration was happening all over the academy now. In the cafeteria, Doyen saw mixed species groups that would have been rare before. A Vrelian and a human discussing blade design. 2 Cretheans and a human comparing notes on structural engineering. The barriers hadn't disappeared, but they'd become more permeable. Not everyone was happy about it. Kresh, the Vrelian cadet who'd confronted Doyen after the exhibition, still glared at any human he passed. Some of the more traditional Cretheans thought working with humans meant accepting that their technology was inferior. Old prejudices died hard, but they were dying. Slowly but surely. Doyen finished his shift in the workshop and headed to his next assignment. Professor Hyan Nam had requested him for a demonstration in her xenotechnology class. Hyun was one of the few human professors at the academy, recruited after the armor incident, when the administration realized they needed more diverse teaching perspectives. The classroom was packed when Doyen arrived. Cadets from 8 different species filled the seats. On the professor's desk sat 3 devices, each from a different alien civilization. "Thank you for joining us, Private Kim," Professor Nam said. "Class, Private Kim has agreed to demonstrate alternative analysis techniques." That's the formal term. Informally, he's going to show you how humans test things when we don't have fancy sensors. She gestured at the devices. Each of these is a communication device from a different species. All 3 are supposedly functional. Your job as soldiers might require you to use captured enemy equipment. Sensors can tell you a lot, but sometimes sensors lie or get jammed. "Private Kim, please examine these and tell us which one is broken." Doyen approached the desk. He'd done this kind of demonstration a dozen times now, but it still felt strange being the center of attention. He picked up the first device, a Vrelian communicator that looked like a crystalline sphere. He held it up to the light, examined it from different angles, shook it gently near his ear, set it down and picked up the second device, this one a Crethean model shaped like a small pyramid. Same process. Look, feel, listen. The cadets watched with varying degrees of skepticism. How could physical examination tell you more than a scanner? The third device was from a species Doyen didn't recognize. It looked organic, like a shell or seed. He spent more time on this one, turning it over in his hands, holding it near his ear. "The Vrelian communicator is functional," he said finally. "The Crethean one is also functional. This one," he held up the organic device, "is dead." Professor Nam smiled. "Correct. How did you know? The first two had a kind of hum, not sound exactly, but vibration. You can feel it if you hold them right. This one is inert. No vibration, no warmth, nothing. It's just dead material. A cadet raised her hand. But scanners could tell you that in seconds. Sure, Doyen agreed. If you have a scanner. If it's powered. If it's not jammed or damaged. If you have time to pull it out and configure it for the right kind of scan. Your hands are always with you. They work in any environment, and they never need charging. Professor Nam nodded. This is what we mean by alternative analysis. Modern technology is wonderful, but it can make us dependent. What happens when that technology fails? Private Kim's methods seem primitive, but they're reliable. They work anywhere, anytime, with no equipment needed beyond your own senses. The class continued with more demonstrations and discussions. By the end, most cadets looked thoughtful rather than skeptical. A few even stayed after to ask Doyen questions about how to develop this kind of tactile awareness. As Doyen left the classroom, he found Mina Song waiting in the corridor. She'd been recruited into xenotechnology research, spending most of her time in the advanced labs now. They didn't see each other as often as they used to. Hey, she said. Got a minute? Sure, what's up? I wanted to show you something. She pulled out her datapad. Remember how you found that weakness in the quantum weave armor? I've been researching the Academy archives. You weren't the first. She displayed a series of historical records. 3 other species developed unbreakable armor over the past 1,000 years. All 3 were defeated in actual combat, usually with significant casualties. Each time the weakness was something simple that simulations missed. Doyen studied the records. So this keeps happening? Every few centuries, yeah. Some species gets really advanced, creates something they think is perfect and forgets to test the basics. Then reality reminds them that perfect doesn't exist. Why does it keep happening if it's happened before? Mina smiled sadly. Because species forget, or they think they're smarter than the species that came before, or they trust their technology too much. Whatever the reason, the pattern repeats. So what do we do about it? That's why I wanted to show you this. I'm proposing a new division at the Academy. Call it the Reality Testing Department or something less dramatic. Its job would be to apply simple, basic tests to all new technology. Stuff that might seem too obvious to bother with. Like hitting armor with hammers? Exactly like that. The Crithians aren't the first to need this lesson. They won't be the last. But maybe we can make sure the lesson sticks this time. Doyen thought about it. The idea made sense. Someone needed to ask the simple questions that experts forgot to ask. Someone needed to remember that sophisticated didn't mean perfect. You should pitch it to the Academy Council, he said. I think they'd listen now. I was hoping you'd help me present it. You're kind of famous now. Your voice carries weight. Famous. Doyen still wasn't comfortable with that word. He was just a cadet who'd done what seemed obvious. But if that fame could be used to make positive changes, maybe it was worth the discomfort. Okay, I'll help. 2 weeks later, Doyen stood in the same formal chamber where he'd been tried 3 months earlier. This time he wasn't defending himself. He was helping Mina propose her idea for systematic reality testing of all new military technology. The council listened carefully. They asked questions. They debated among themselves. Finally, your proposal has merit. The pattern Cadet Song identified is concerning. We will establish this new division on a trial basis. Cadet Song, you will lead the research team. Private Kim, you will continue your current role but also advise this new division. The goal is to institutionalize the kind of alternative thinking that exposed the quantum weave. After the meeting, Instructor Jaewon Choi found Doyen in the corridor. Congratulations. You just changed how the entire galaxy approaches military technology. Mina did most of the work. But you gave her the example to build on. That matters, and Choi paused. I got word from Earth today. Your grandfather saw the news feeds. He's very proud, Doyen smiled. That meant more than all the Academy recognition combined. Did he say anything else? He said to remind you that finding the weakness is only half the job. You also have to teach others how to fix it. I know you are. Graduation came faster than Doyen expected. 4 years at the Academy passed in what felt like moments. He graduated with honors, though not the highest honors. His grades in advanced technology courses were average, but his practical testing scores and his contribute